Hello, welcome to The Ticket. I'm Tracey Holmes. The Winter Olympics in Beijing are being billed as the greenest and cleanest ever. But like the 2014 Sochi Games and the 2018 Pyeongchang Games, officials will be relying almost entirely on artificial snow. More on the environmental impact of the Games in a moment and the diplomatic boycott of the Games. But first, Alisa Camplin is one of Australia's most successful Winter Olympians, winning Australia's first ever Olympic skiing gold medal at the 2002 Salt Lake City Games. Alisa will be at Beijing as the Australian team's Deputy Chef de Mission, and she joins us now. Alisa,
Hello,
thanks very much for your time. It's so fascinating, isn't it? Because there was a period when nobody in the world expected Australia to compete at a Winter Olympics, but here we are, and there you are. Where did your Olympic dream start?
Well, I think it sits within the culture of sport in Australia. You know, we're always there to compete, not necessarily just to participate. So slowly over time and with investment and support and good quality coaching and facilities, we were able to climb onto, I guess, the global standings in winter sport. And since that day in 2002, where Stephen Bradbury and I had the chance to bring gold medals back in Winter Olympics, we've only built further and further and brought more medals home since then and broadened the number of sports that we are seriously competitive in. So pretty exciting to have, been there at the start, but people were there before me and, plenty of people are coming after, which is what's exciting.
Yeah, just talk a little bit about that depth, because we're seeing Australians represented across the broad spectrum of winter sports now.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of Australians would be familiar with sports that we're really strong in, like aerial skiing, mogul skiing, snowboard. But we also have the snowboard across, as well as the snowboard halfpipe. We will have athletes competing in figure skating. For the first time ever, historically, we're going to have a mixed team pair in the curling. So that's pretty exciting. And we're also really strongly pushing into bobsleigh now with Brianna Walker in the monobob. So, there's a lot of sport breadth that's really developed over the last few years. And that's a testament to the athletes and the coaches and, dreaming big and pushing hard and working towards excellence every day. And I think we're going to see a really nice mix of interesting and competitive athletes at these games.
You speak about the effort and, the potential for injury and how difficult these winter sports are. This is something from your bio on the Australian Olympic Committee website. She broke her collarbone and a hand, separated her shoulder, dislocated her sternum twice, ripped her hip flexor out of her groin, broke both ankles, tore her right knee and cracked 12 ribs. But after she seared through two perfect triple twisting double somersaults to win the Olympic gold medal at Deer Valley, she felt the agony had all been worthwhile. I mean, really? Does that agony just drop away because you win a gold medal?
Listen, I think there's plenty of sports, summer and winter, where injury is more prevalent, and it's not just about managing your body, it's about managing your mind as well, and your expectations. And, bouncing back from injury is a huge part of being an elite athlete. And, you've got to be professional in every sense, looking after you, like I said, your mind and your body and your emotions along the way. So getting to the start line is a really important factor, let alone in today's time where you've got the backdrop of a global pandemic. So trying to maintain your health and travel around country to country and managing all the protocols to actually get to the games, it is all worth it. It's all worth it when you get there. You put on the green and gold and you're representing your country. That's amazing. Like, that is the dream of every one of these athletes. And then to be able to go to the games and to do your best, that is something you can take away and you can live with yourself and that chapter of your life for the rest of your life. So, it was all worth it. I don't look back for a minute with any regret. And I know that every athlete that's committed to this pathway and trying to get to the Olympics, you do it on a dime. And yes, you do have injuries on the way. And winter sport athletes have to spend a lot of time overseas away from friends and family, but they wouldn't change it for a second. This is their passion. This is what they want to be great at. They want to be masters of their craft and be the best they can possibly be. So leave no doubt that they will be there to do their best, and everything they've been through along the way doesn't change the honour of representing your country.
Now, we know that some of the people that won't be there will be the politicians through the diplomatic boycott. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, I come at the Games as an ex-Olympian. I have a lot of skills and experience that I'm bringing to the team. And so I'm really focused on trying to help the team to optimise this opportunity. I'm 100% focused on performance. And I would never ask Scott Morrison to do an aerial skiing jump. So I'm going to leave the politics to the politicians. And I think that's important. We try not to mix sport and politics. And I really just want to help each of these athletes to maximise this window of their life. These opportunities and dreams only come around maybe once in a lifetime. So that's kind of how I'm framing it for myself.
I know that you do a lot of work now in the corporate sector and you talk about resilience and well-being and performance. It's such a difficult environment now, isn't it? Because where do you draw that line between getting the best out of somebody, actually making sacrifices, demanding excellence from athletes and not straying into that territory where we're seeing more and more stories now about abusive cultures in sport? That must be a very difficult line to navigate.
I think first and foremost, every athlete is a human being. Every person in the corporate environment is a human being. So if you can start with the wellness of the person and then you can build on that so that the professional can rise up and perform from a strong foundation, then you're building something tangible and sustainable. And that's really important to us. We need the people that go on these journeys to be well. You can't expect something from someone that's not well. So we try and focus a lot of skill building and training and put a lot of support structures around our athletes to ensure that they are in a healthy position mentally, emotionally, physically, socially, and ensure that we can get them there safely and then look after them through an Olympics and, of course, then on the other side. So I think that's the important thing. If people feel safe, if they feel supported, then they're more likely to open up and be ready to be resilient, to problem solve, to regulate themselves as they go through these big experiences. And don't get me wrong, going to an Olympics, trying to even qualify for Olympics, it puts on a lot of emotional pressure on the athletes and the coaches. So we have sports psychologists there, we have health and wellbeing experts that work with the team in order to put that support there, because we know that if our humans on the team are well taken care of, then the chance of our athletes to achieve what they want to achieve is much higher. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we want people to be content, to be satisfied. It's not about medals. It's about trying to facilitate an environment, a whole team environment, where everyone can do their best. So we're very much fixated on the process and not the outcome. And if we do the process right, then the rest should take care of itself.
Alisa, can you just give us a bit of a snapshot of who we should be watching, what we should be looking out for in Beijing?
So get the pen and paper out, because there's plenty of athletes that are going to be very impressive and that Australia is going to enjoy watching. First of all, our 2018 medalists are back. We're going to see Scott James in the snowboard halfpipe. We've got Matt Graham in the moguls and Jared Hughes in the snowboard across. And Jared with Belle Brockhoff, the defending world championships in the team snowboard across. We also have our aerialists with Laura Peel, defending world champion, Danielle Scott, recently on the podium. We have Brianna Walker in the bobsleigh, who's a medalist, and also our new curlers, first time to the Olympics, Dean Hewitt and Tali Gill. Also on the snow, we have Jakara Anthony, who's been regularly on the podium over the last few weeks. There's plenty of young guns too. We have Valentina Gaselli in the snowboard, and we have young Josie Baff, 18, who looks like she's going to qualify for her first games too. So there's a lot to be excited about. Every one of these athletes has a great story. So get behind them, enjoy the beauty, the romance, the thrill, the spills, and cheer loudly is what I say.
Alisa Camplin, all the very best for Beijing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
From a former champion of aerial skiing to a current one, Laura Peel is aiming for a medal in Beijing. Earlier this year, Peel became Australia's first aerial skiing double world champion, winning gold at the World Championship in Kazakhstan. Peel joined us from Finland, where she just won silver at the World Cup, sharing the podium with fellow Australian Danielle Scott.
We've had a massive 10 days here in Finland. We had 6 World Cup events within 10 days, so I think we're all pretty shattered now, but we definitely finished up on a high with 2 Aussie podiums, Danielle Scott finishing in first and then myself in second place. So we've had a big pre-season camp here in Finland and to kick off the World Cup season so well, only 50 days out from the Olympics, is definitely a positive. Yeah, moving in the right direction for sure. Danny and I have been teammates for a long time, for over 10 years now, and I think throughout our careers we've both pushed each other to be better. And Danny's a beautiful jumper, and it's great to see good jumps be rewarded.
How are you feeling about your run-up to Beijing? Are your preparations where you want them to be?
You know, only 51 days out from Beijing now, so it's going to roll around really quickly, but I'm feeling good. I've had a great past couple of seasons. Last year I was the world champion, or last season, sorry, and also world number 1. So I'm feeling really confident going in. But I know in an Olympic year, all athletes step it up to the next level. I've definitely got a lot of competition out there, so I feel like I just need to stick to my plan and keep working hard. I certainly don't want to be complacent, but I'm feeling in a good place going in now.
So as a world champion, do you feel that extra bit of pressure going to the Olympics? And if so, where does that pressure come from?
Well, they say pressure is a privilege, right? So I think, you know, I'm always going to be proud to be a world champion and to be world number 1 no matter what comes next. So, you know, I'm very, very grateful for those things. And yeah, I guess there is a little bit more pressure. I think there's always pressure from myself. I want to perform to the best of my ability. Maybe there's a little bit more focus from outside sources going in as number 1. But again, I'm very grateful for all the support I get, and I know that I just have to keep working hard in this lead up. And if I put down my best jumps on the day, I think that's going to land me in a pretty good spot.
Obviously, COVID had a massive impact on the Summer Olympics, delaying the Games for a year. How has COVID impacted your training and your competitions?
I think for better or worse, you know, now we're very used to competing in a COVID world and dealing with those COVID protocols that we have to follow. It has changed things a bit. I think in the last year and a half, I've maybe been at home for a month or 6 weeks or so. So I haven't been able to get home as much as I would have liked. But, you know, it is what it is, and we're happy to be competing, and we're happy to have the Olympics coming up.
You're a Games veteran now. This is your 3rd Olympics. Is there anything outside of the competition that you want to do, or moments that you want to savour this time around?
Yeah, I think every Olympic Games is different and very special in its own way. Certainly at my 2nd Olympic Games, I was able to take everything in and appreciate it a bit more. I was a bit of a deer in headlights at my first Games. I think with the COVID protocols, this Olympics is going to be a little bit different. I think it's going to be more just about the competition. I'm not sure what we're going to be able to do outside of that. So going in, I'm very grateful for my experience. I'm happy that I've been there before and I know a little bit what to expect. I think it's going to be a very different Games for sure.
Australian aerial skier Laura Peel joining us earlier from Finland, where she just won silver at the FIS World Cup. And coming up, we'll take a look at the new state-of-the-art training centre in Brisbane, where some of our Olympians, including Laura Peel, have been practising ahead of the Games. So that's how you train without snow, but how do you hold a Winter Olympics without it? Between January and March this year, just 2 centimetres of snow fell in Yanqing, northwest of Beijing, where the alpine skiing events will be staged in February. And while you might think having no snow is a bit of a deal breaker for a Winter Olympics, that's not necessarily the case. Beijing pitched itself as a winter wonderland in this graphic-heavy bid for the 2022 Winter Olympics. Except in reality, there was one glaring omission: snow.
There's no snow to be seen anywhere.
Even the IOC's report on Beijing's proposed locations for events showed bare, brown mountains in the middle of winter, but only noted it insofar as the lack of natural snow might not look good.
Olympic spirit fills the air.
The other bid for 2022 came from Kazakhstan, which tried to leverage Beijing's lack of snow with this cheeky slogan:
Keep it real.
Real snow.
But almost all 11 Winter Games since 1980 have relied on snowmakers, and those who didn't might have wished they did.
Weather has not been our friend, as you probably know, and it is continuing to challenge us.
Vancouver, Canada was forced into last-minute snowmaking, with tons of the white stuff trucked and helicoptered from higher altitudes for the Games to go on. Sochi, one of Russia's warmest regions, planned ahead with 80% of its snow made by machines. While South Korea's Games chief famously said, "No snow, no problem," and he meant it. More than 90% of Pyeongchang's slopes were thanks to machines. It's not a modern phenomenon. Long before snow machines, Olympic hosts have sought to ensure the best conditions for athletes.
A new method of refrigeration is being used to freeze the blocks of ice into a fast but safe surface.
For the 2022 Games, hundreds of snow cannons will be used mountainside in Yanqing. And while the athletes often prefer the faster slopes, it's led to questions around the environmental cost of the Games. Let's discuss this issue of sport and climate change further with a champion Olympian. Speed skater Johan Koss won 4 Olympic gold medals for Norway, including 3 in front of his home crowd at Lillehammer in 1994. Since hanging up his skates, Koss has focused on humanitarian projects. His work in the world of finance looks at how investments can have a positive impact in areas such as climate change. Johan Koss, welcome to The Ticket.
Nice to see you again.
Let's start on the issue of climate change and how winter sports adapt. Where do you see the Winter Olympics' role in this?
Probably some of the things we're going to feel the most is obviously with the lack of snow. We will have a big problem kind of arranging both, World Championships and the Olympics and World Cups and etc. So I don't think, but obviously with the climate problem, global climate problem is a bigger issue than the winter sports. But winter sports can have a certain role in advocating for taking it seriously and making sure they're taking the right measures and adoptions and using the most number of tools to be able to reduce the impact of carbon. Basically saying that we need to change and help with the climate change problem.
Do you think that sports bodies should be getting involved in these sorts of things, or do you think they should adopt the line the IOC always uses about being politically neutral?
I mean, it's hard to say that being effectively in the environmental protection areas now, that's not really any political gambit anymore. I mean, I think you have to do it. And I think, of course, winter sport by all means should do it. I mean, it's a self-threatening issue. If you won't change it, we might not have any winter sport left. So it's going to be important to make sure that we do it very, very rapidly. And the winter sport stands up and kind of advocate for all climate measures being taken seriously. And that means also, of course, looking at the way the sport movement impact climate. It's also kind of a critical element to it, of course, and how we can be a part of the solution, not only being advocates for a solution.
Some people argue that the Olympics shouldn't award the Games to places like China because of its human rights record, and others argue it brings attention where attention might be needed. Where do you sit in that debate?
That's a good question, because both things are right. I think it's just interesting. We see obviously the focus because of the Olympics now coming in Beijing, and it does put a lot of emphasis on the human rights records and the changes in the society in China, where there's much bigger problems. Obviously, from our perspective, it's a bigger problem, particularly for certain minorities and groups living in China. The democracy problems we see and feel in Hong Kong and Taiwan, there's other elements to it. So it's a number of issues from the outside. We feel like it's a big problem. And I think we feel that's an issue. Is an issue about individual human rights and also about certain values we believe in, which are seen differently. The Olympics also, at the same time, not only giving focus to it, but we also maybe gives an opportunity to see what's felt and done for the people, what is happening, and create a greater understanding if it's been used that way. But saying it's non-political, that's not true. And I think when you take one stand and you step your feet into it. You have to take an active role and has certain responsibility that it's following certain elements of human rights issues, and you have to advocate if this is going to happen. It has to have a certain change.
As you know, some countries, including Australia, are staging diplomatic boycotts. Gone are the days that athletes are asked to do that, but there is more pressure in this era for athletes themselves to take a stand on issues. How would you go if you were competing today with that sort of pressure?
Yeah, I think it's just very difficult. I mean, most athletes who have the chance to participate at the Olympics get that chance only once in their life. And you wait 4 years and prepare for it for 4 years to be there. And it seems like an unfair pressure on an individual in relation to that one chance. So, and particularly since the athletes have no choice, there are no influence on where they select to host the Olympics, or where it should go, or how it's going to be done. So it's kind of you are a victim of the system. I do believe that athletes should have much bigger say. They should be independent athletes in the decision-making in relation to where the Olympics should be held. I actually say I've seen more advocacy and activism in athletes than ever before. I see athletes taking the responsibility and speaking up much more than they ever done.
Johan, do you still tune into the races that you contested to see who's doing it best now?
Speed skating at the Olympics will have much more countries at the top this time than it has been in the last couple of Olympics. I see the Asian teams has done incredible. The Japanese, the Chinese, and the Koreans are really coming through, not only on the short distances, but both men and women.
Johan Koss, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Australia will compete at the mixed doubles in curling for the very first time in an Olympic Games. Mixed doubles pair Tali Gill and Dean Hewitt qualified for Beijing after winning all 7 matches in a qualifying tournament held in the Netherlands. The pair's 6-5 victory over Korea, creating Australian Winter Olympic history.
And Australia, they have just secured a spot in the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing.
Been practicing for friggin' 3 months. Friggin' amazing, yeah. Oh my God.
I caught up with Tali Gill and Dean Hewitt after their victory.
Basically, we went into this event wanting to qualify, wanting to be in that final game, and we knew we had to win almost all of our games in the round robin. So we just took it one game at a time, and you know, as soon as we did that game, sort of reset and go fresh into the next one. So yeah, just super thrilled to be where we are right now. Yeah.
So from what I've gathered, you're looking very calm and collected. Behind the scenes, you're frantically packing, trying to get on the plane to get back for more training. You weren't calm and collected at that final end when you knew you'd won and qualified. Tell me about part of the journey in just getting here, because with COVID and everything else, it was a real uphill task, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was a whole year there, basically last year, where I didn't even throw a rock, which was pretty tough. And then having, you know, to go to Worlds earlier this year and not being able to qualify during that event, you know, it was difficult because it meant we had to, you know, come home, quarantine, and then have to come back over to Canada to train some more before this event. So it has been a long journey. We've played juniors for many years now, had so many losses that can't even count. But, you know, you have to work your way from the bottom to get to the top. You know, Australia is a really tough country to curl in because we don't have any dedicated curling ice. So to perform against those top teams, you got to work really hard. And we've just put the training time in this year and, you know, it's paid off.
What was the reaction from some of your opponents and competitors? Because I guess they probably look at you rather uniquely as well, don't they, knowing that Australia is not a top curling nation?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that they probably view us as someone that we could like easily be beaten because we're not a typical curling nation. But, you know, it's always nice to sort of be the underdog, I guess. And we know how we play, and that's all we need to do is play our best. And whatever the other team does, it's totally up to them. So we just got to play our game.
And how did you two both come to curling?
So for me, my mum was originally Canadian and met my dad, who's Australian. So it was kind of natural for them to teach me. You know, they played for Australia for many years there, and Dad actually played in 1992 when it was a demonstration sport at the Olympics. But this is the first time, you know, Australia's qualified as a full discipline. But then for Tali, you know, it also came through a mum, funnily enough, but didn't have the Canadian connection. It was just straight through, you know, an Aussie kind of story. So we both met through juniors and played alongside each other for many years there. And then a few years ago, I said to Tali, well, what do you think about playing and making a run for this Olympics and see how we can go? You know, we're a young team and see if we can develop over not just this cycle, but the next cycle. And yeah, I think we're pretty happy to get on board and train the house down.
So going into the event you've just completed in the Netherlands, what did you rate as your chances of going through in a clean sweep and qualifying without any further qualification necessary?
This was kind of the last chance so there was only 2 spots left for the mixed doubles in the Olympics. So this was kind of the last chance to qualify. And I think we knew we could, you know, be up there with a chance to qualify. Didn't expect to go through with a clean sweep at all. We knew it would be a really tough grind to get to the final game. But yeah, I mean, we had put in really hard work and trained really hard in Canada for a few months. So we were confident that we would be able to get into the final game.
So it's just a little over 50 days to go until the Beijing Olympics. What's that 50 days look like for you?
Who knows? We have a lot of preparation to do. I think on this next flight, we've got about 9 hours. We're going to be on a big Wi-Fi plan on this flight, and we're going to be doing a lot of planning, a lot of scheduling. We don't even know where we're staying when we get back to Canada. So there's a lot to go. We just know that we've got a lot of support with our coach there and a few family and friends, and a really good curling rink too, who's helped us out for the last few months, getting us in tip-top shape.
Australia's aerial and mogul skiers can now swap the snow for the sun to train with a new facility opening up in the Brisbane area this year. Morella Taylor is the General Manager of the Sleeman Sports Complex, where the Jeff Henke Olympic Winter Training Centre is located, and she joins us now. What a fabulous addition this has been for our Winter Olympians. How much use has it been put through early on?
It's had plenty of use in the last 12 months since it's been open. In fact, it probably couldn't have opened at a better time during obviously some of the COVID closures that occurred, because the whole purpose of this facility is that athletes can train here 365 days a year without needing to go overseas. So it's been fantastic for the likes of Danny and Laura to be able to train here up to 20 to 30 hours a week over the last 12 months.
And how realistic is it? I mean, I guess there's no comparison for the real thing, but how do you make it feel so real? How does it give them the sensation of doing what they do in the snow?
There's a lot of technology that goes behind the ski jump. There's a snowflake surface which allows from a dry land perspective to be able to come down the slopes, water jets that allow that propelling to happen, and most importantly, it's all about the lift that they get at the end, being able to practice those aerial tricks and land in a safe space. Obviously, when you're trying to refine your tricks early on, you don't want to be doing that in a ski environment where you could be prone to injury. So landing in a pool is a fantastic way to be able to do those tricks 30, 40, 50 times a day whilst you practice them, and then you take them to the slopes once you've got them perfected.
And have you had a go?
No, I haven't, not personally. This is one I'm very happy to leave to the professionals.
Do you get many calls at the centre for people saying they'd like to have a go, not actually being elite athletes, but wanting to, you know, be a bit of a thrill seeker?
Anyone that sees this structure has one of two responses. Either they want to know how they can get up to the top and be a daredevil, or they're like, no, they're like myself, no way, I will leave that to the professionals. So, but the people of Brisbane have loved coming down and being able to watch the athletes train, something they've never had a chance to do before.
That's fantastic. Marilla, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of The Ticket. Thanks for watching. See you next time.